The British Prime Minister Gordon Brown has paid a surprise visit to British troops in Afghanistan. He went to the Camp Bastion and Lashkar bases in Helmand province. The Prime Minister promised the troops there greater protection from improvised explosive devices and hinted that more troops may need to be sent to train the Afghan army. James Landell has been travelling with the Prime Minister and sent this report.
There are some who've accused Gordon Brown of not doing enough to support British forces. But this is his fourth visit to Afghanistan in a year and another chance to talk to troops on the front line. After the army's bloodiest summer so far, 38 dead since the beginning of July, and weeks of controversy over possible helicopter shortages, the Prime Minister wanted to show not just his support for British troops, he also wanted to restate his case for war, namely that unchecked terrorism in Afghanistan could reach the streets of Britain. He also believes that the campaign to secure the Afghan elections was worth it, despite the low turnouts in some areas and the British losses. The Prime Minister knows that there is increasing public anxiety about this war back home, but he's not here just to say that this is a fight worth having and that the right equipment is getting through. He's also here to prepare the way for more troops coming out. Crucial to the coalition strategy is training up Afghan troops and police. The Prime Minister says he wants this training programme brought forward by a year so that there are more Afghan boots on the ground quicker.
I think we could get another 50,000 Afghan army personnel trained over the next year. Stepping that up means that the Afghans take more responsibility for their own affairs. They're backed up by partnering and mentoring done by the British forces, and you can see behind you the new equipment that we're bringing into the field to back this up.
But quicker training would need more British troops to train the Afghans, and it's this that Mr Brown discussed with General Stanley McChrystal, the American head of NATO forces here. He's expected soon to tell President Obama that more troops are needed across the board, and some of them will almost certainly be British. As for those British troops already here, well, for them, Gordon Brown promised greater help to counter the threat of improvised explosive devices that have exacted such a heavy toll on British forces. Another 200 extra anti-IED specialists will be deployed in the autumn, and there'll be more unmanned surveillance aircraft and better protected vehicles. For Gordon Brown, the summer of controversy has made Afghanistan a front-rank political issue. He's hoping that better protection for British forces might just make it less of one. James Landell, BBC News in Helmand province.
At least 14 policemen have been killed after a suicide bomb attack in Pakistan's northwestern Swat Valley. Many more people have been injured. The blast occurred as police recruits were being trained at the station in the town of Mingora. The attack is said to be one of the largest in the Swat Valley since the end of a Pakistani army offensive against Taliban militants. We're joined now by Orla Guerin in Islamabad. Orla, it was only a few weeks ago that the Pakistani army was saying we had cleared nearly every single one of those militants. This is a big blow for them.
Well, yes, the army had been claiming only last month that the Swat Valley and surrounding areas were 99% cleared of militants. That claim had been echoed by the government, the Prime Minister Yusuf Razif Gilani going as far as to say that extremists had been eliminated. On the basis of those claims, the displaced people, up to 2 million of them, had been instructed to go home. There was a government-led and financed campaign to get people out of the displaced camps and back into the Swat Valley on the basis that normal life could resume and they would be protected. Now, I have to say that many of those who returned went back with a great deal of anxiety. We joined some of them on their journey. They were tremendously concerned that the militants hadn't been destroyed and had simply been dispersed and maybe driven to the high ground. And commanders in the valley admitted to us at that time that they did believe there were pockets of Taliban who were on the high ground. The big concern, of course, was that the leaders had not been found, and while they remain free, many will be anxious about their ability to reorganise. But today's attack is the biggest that has taken place since the army took control. We're told that the bomber disguised himself as a recruit and joined others at a training session, killing, we're told, about 14 police recruits.
Orla Guerin in Islamabad, thank you.
Today, the deadliest month for American and British forces in Afghanistan draws to a close. And with it comes a warning that the current military strategy just isn't working. That's the sober assessment of none other than General Stanley McChrystal. He's the head of US and NATO forces in the country. 2 months after taking up his post, McChrystal says that success is still achievable, but only with a radical change in approach. So, have the last 7.5 years of the Afghan war been a wasted opportunity? Here's the BBC's North America editor, Mark Mardell.
The battle against the Taliban has lasted 8 years. Now the United States commander there feels all that time they've got it wrong. He says the situation is serious, success is achievable with a revised strategy. No helmet for General Stanley McChrystal as he strolls around one noted trouble spot trying to make friends. He warns Afghans are undergoing a crisis of confidence and need to be persuaded the American troops are in their country to make their ordinary daily lives better. He believes most insurgents aren't ideological warriors, but trying to earn a crust.
If we can go into an area and we can achieve stability, and the average Taliban fighter then decides just to go back home and take up farming or another trade, to me that's the best outcome. We don't kill anybody. We give him an opportunity to just quietly rejoin society, and I think that's the best outcome.
The general stresses villages can't just be taken, they have to be taken and held. He doesn't ask for more troops or more money in this report. It's bound to come later. We don't know how the White House would respond to any such request, but they're saying this will take time. And who do they blame? Well, President Bush for going into Iraq and fighting, they say, the wrong war.
This was under-resourced, underfunded, undermanned, and ignored for years. And that's not going to change overnight.
The president hasn't seen the report yet. He's still on holiday. But it's in line with his determination to win hearts and minds. If it comes to more boots on the ground, that'll be tough.
Putting people at risk when the enterprise is not clear and when success is not yet defined is really risky.
When the vote counting finally ends in Afghanistan, a lot of pressure will be put on the Afghan government. The general makes it quite clear that they need to do more to inspire their people and take the lead, that in the end, this is their fight. Mark Mardell, BBC News, Washington.
So what impact will this report have on the ground in Afghanistan? Well, for answers, I spoke a brief time ago with the BBC's correspondent there, Damien Grammaticus. Damien, this report by General McChrystal makes pretty sobering reading. How significant is it going to be?
I think it's going to be hugely significant, Matt. Remember, General McChrystal was put in this position by President Obama, who's shifted the focus from Iraq to here in Afghanistan. He's shifted the troop deployments here. This is the war that he's putting the focus on. This is the war that General McChrystal has been tasked with turning around and winning, and this is the report that will lay out the strategy for doing that. And what General McChrystal has been saying is that the situation is serious, but there can be success here if the strategy is changed. And I think he's going to point to quite a number of different changes across the board, but essentially it focuses around winning over Afghan people.
We've always been told, Damien, that the military process and the political process go hand in hand in Afghanistan and indeed in other places around the world. Now, if the military process is already in jeopardy, what about the political process? I mean, you've seen in the last weeks the Afghans barely turning out to vote, accusations of electoral fraud. Clearly, that doesn't bode too well for any new strategy that the Pentagon might come up with.
No, it absolutely doesn't, and I think that is the concern of diplomats here, and it must be the concern for General McChrystal as well, I think, because we're also, of course, in this situation of sort of limbo at the minute. We've had the presidential elections, results are trickling in. We had another 10% of polling stations declaring today, so we've had about half of all polling stations declaring, which puts the incumbent President Karzai at 45%, short of an outright majority. So if it stayed like that, we'd be heading for a second round. But the real question, the real problem, are these 600 or so serious allegations of fraud hanging over the election that have been made, all of those being investigated, all being described as potentially serious enough to alter the election results in specific districts. And that is the concern, I think, that this could, if the election results themselves are seen as dubious, that will affect the legitimacy of the president who emerges from this.
Damon Grammaticus there speaking to me from Kabul. On the other side of the border in Pakistan, the army says its soldiers have killed at least 30 Taliban militants in gun battles across the volatile northwestern Swat Valley. This latest action follows a suicide bombing on a police station which killed 17 cadets on Sunday. That was the deadliest Taliban attack in Swat since the army retook control of the area in its 3-month offensive.